Hello, hello. It's that time again that we're talking social media. This week we read chapter 7. I saw that the schedule had chapter 8 listed on the calendar, and that's incorrect. So if you read chapter 8, you are ahead for next week, which is great. But you can just follow along today on our lecture. You are more than welcome to reference the textbook when you answer your discussion questions, but most of it's built into our slides today. So let's get started. Chapter 7 is talking about new and mobile media technologies. We'll start off with the history of tech development, and then it talked about areas of current technology and social interaction. It's kind of like a very basic overview of how we got to where we currently are. So let's talk about some of the vocab terms first. Vocab terms of social graph, opportunity cost, cash jacking, and location-based services. Many of these you actually most likely have used. Definitely the location-based services. If you have a cell phone of anything in the last number of years, you have used location-based servicing. So let's talk about some of this today. Let's start with the quote that there are critical economic and social perspectives that connect knowledgeable innovation to broad trends of global workforce. Use of social media to stay connected and young professionalism. Essentially, they're saying that the next purpose of social media is to make lonely foreigners have an opportunity to meet face to face. I liked this metaphor. It seems like we are unknown people in this unknown land, and we're using social media to be foreigners gathering together. But it's talking about how we're building a cultural discourse and practices and norms and identifications and communities. We're essentially having e-globalization. We are deciding what kind of culture we are online as a world. So why do companies then spend so much time on the secrecy of research and development? This is kind of like if a company doesn't share their information with you, there's something that you're lacking. They can see you through a two-way mirror, but you cannot see them. I think of this kind of like a speakeasy. These used to have a password for you to get in, and oftentimes it was built like a separate room. You can't be able to tell that it's a separate area until you actually were on the inside. And so people in restaurants or in the front house saloon or barber shop would be going on the normal business, but they are being spied on, and there is a selective cultural in the back. So why? Why this level of secrecy on our data and the research on us? That's what we'll get to a little bit today. It comes down to money. The monetization of psychological use motivation may be at the core of understanding rapid mobile and social media adoption. This is saying the more we can understand you, the more we can make money off of this. If we can predict certain behaviors, this is the core of our understanding with your phone and your mobile usage. Goes into the next quote of social networking sites that employ social media must transform innovation into a business model. So if you're studying lab rats, how can you take the data from lab rats and make money off of that in the future? Well, are lab rats more likely to choose Snickers as a candy bar instead of, I don't know, what's the Snicker? I don't know, Reese's. Okay, so I'm saying something a little bit out there. So if you're testing rats and you're saying rats generally like to eat Snickers more than Reese's, how can you make money on that knowledge? I know many of you are probably surprised that I just said that I don't like Reese's, and rats would not choose Reese's. But it does talk about how social networking sites have to have at least 4 types of, oh, I'm sorry, it's missing a background. Okay, so it has at least 4 types to make money. So the prompt here is that you'll see that they need to have this ability to make money on their knowledge. So it's going to ask you, as companies innovate, they also need to make money. What, if any, complications are there between innovation and monetization for social media? I'm so sorry about that background. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, so as companies innovate, they also need to make money. What, if any, complications are there between innovation and and monetization for social media. Successful social media platforms have the following 4 ideas. They must provide a needed product and or service. They must function within user expectations. They must serve a particular market. And they must ultimately generate revenue in order to survive and prosper. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. Right after grad school, I got a job in between grad school and then working at Cal State San Marcos. I got a job at GoFundMe, which is the company actually the textbook talks about in chapter 7. I left GoFundMe shortly after being there, probably 4 months or so. I couldn't agree with the business model they had. People were consistently donating money to separate pages, or they would call them campaigns, but they weren't donating to specific nonprofits like a 501c3 or nonprofit organizations. They were donating to one another. Previously, the best source that people could donate to one another or give money to each other is PayPal. PayPal wasn't always the easiest. It still is not the easiest. There are a number of hidden fees that users don't necessarily understand. And before phone-based apps transfer money, I'm thinking like Venmo, there really weren't many other options. So GoFundMe's business model was certainly providing a product and service to a particular market, so people with needs or needing specific kinds of money. So GoFundMe's business model also talked about they would take 5 to 9% of transaction fees. And they boasted that this was the best rate. And as of 2014, it was. I haven't checked the dates since then or of other sites, something like Bucaring, but it certainly had a lower percent. So we can see how they had a product, they had a service, they had a particular market. And this is where I then had questions on the ethical part of the company. Their business model was to simply take a slice of the pie that people will donate to other campaigns. And I have a problem with taking money of people in need when you see pages and pages after house fires or pages and pages after people that need funds after being sick during a time with us profiting on other people's ability to donate. And also the people weren't very nice, so it's very easy to leave after you would be hearing shouting matches between a couple of the bosses every day. So that's a particular story. I worked at GoFundMe for a while. We can talk about that later, but that is a part of the decision of getting into social media. I would encourage you all to not donate to GoFundMe pages as a very biased ploy. But we know that social communication of customer service, the social media communication of customer engagement provides important texture and context for site visitors. Usually 4 things happen when you go to any type of engagement on any service. You either can share, you can be more altruistic, you can have value creation, you can influence others in these marketing concepts. So these 4 main ideas are really important. We're now saying that social media observers, we have this level of engaging in these 4 areas that we didn't have before, that we don't have in other regards. I'm thinking back to a while ago, we were going to the Navy ball, and so I didn't have anything to wear, so I went to a very commonly used company called Rent the Runway. And Rent the Runway is built that you can post your images of dresses and essentially rent a designer gown. So let's walk through how Rent the Runway is really ahead of its time in terms of social media altruism engagement. You will see on the main page that there is a video. Say you're on Rent the Runway, you like this particular product, you think, yep, it's great, it's perfect for this function. On the top left-hand corner, you can see comments, or you can scroll into the bottom of all of the reviews of other people using it. And this is essentially saying, look, this dress was great, it fit me well here, it didn't have too many spots that were uncomfortable. And then in each of these people, you can also understand their own dimensions. Okay, I'm this size, I'm this height, here's my general athletic type or my general body structure. And this is the best example that I can possibly think of that shows our level of being altruistic and kind to other people. This is like you come to my closet and I say, hey, borrow this dress. Here are all the things I liked about it. Here are the things I did not like about it. And so I have value creation. We've made influence. I can then be sharing these points with other people intending to rent that dress. Without that social media engagement part with Rent the Runway, they probably wouldn't have been as successful. It's just another company where you can rent clothes online. So this is one of the best parts of social media. If it doesn't work today, there isn't a limit. You can then fix it and, oh, there we go. You can then fix it, you can change it, and you can make it better. But what happens with social media when they don't work? So here's the discussion prompt number 2. Successful social media platforms have 4 musts. Pick any debunked social media platform. Pick one of these forms, either MySpace, Blogger, Vine, Yak, and talk about these 4 musts. Remember, we're going back to the 4 musts that it has to provide a service or product, it has to have user expectations, it has to be a particular market, and generate money. So if you can't think of one of these, maybe you've never used Yik Yak, maybe you've never heard of Vine, maybe pick a specific successful platform and go through those 4 main musts and talk about how that platform is actually doing a great job. I would say for Rent the Runway, it certainly has a particular market. It has people that are in need of renting clothing. It has a particular availability of having a service or product. It has user expectations that I can go and get a dress, and I'm not seeing other ads for movie reviews, or I'm not seeing ads for where to buy the best donut. And then finally, how does it generate money in order to survive? So this is discussion prompt number 2. I can either pause here or you can jump to the next slide. Moving on. So besides changing our usage of online media, let's talk about small businesses. Small businesses are building something that will probably not work and then fixing it and improving the product each week. If you are already a small business owner, or maybe you come from a family of small business owners, that takes a very long process to implement a new product, to implement a way of doing something. I'm thinking of maybe a corner store, your bodega, your typical gas station store, your liquor store, the corner market. For them to have a new product on the shelf, it takes a while to garner these numbers that I have installed this new type of orange juice. This orange juice, we will track this for the next month. We will see how it compares the month after that, and then we'll decide if we purchase more of this orange juice in the future. That's going to take maybe 2 months for you to see results that would be really telling of how that product is doing. Social media, if it doesn't work one day, they can change it and make it different for the next. You can recode, you can rework it, you can rewrite, you can refeature, you can take off something. I think of some of the particular campaigns or the initiatives on Twitter to change some parts of Snapchat. A while ago, Snapchat changed some of the features of how it listed information, and the internet on Twitter got really upset, and they started petitions of how to change it back to being timeline oriented. But that's great. I love how small business opportunity and entrepreneurs have this ability to change their material right away. If something is broken, if something isn't doing well, they can change it. If something is doing well, they can then capitalize and increase that, or make it better, or make it bigger. So social media has now moved away from an innovation to an important function within small and large companies, and now it's very much established. It's now expected in any size company that you'll have a social media component. Moving on. Let's talk about entrepreneurs. The same open approach development that was seen during personal computer. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Okay, during the same open approach, the development that was seen during the personal computer and internet revolution seems present with social media and mobile. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back. So Let's talk about entrepreneurs. So the same open approach to development that was seen during the personal computer and internet revolution seems present with social and mobile media. The development of smartphone apps almost immediately helped to define social media as mobile. While we were increasing our ability to connect to the internet, at the same time, phones happened to be developed, either purposefully or consequently or incidentally. We know that we now are tying social media to a mobile platform. No longer are we even assuming that there are tablets or desktop computers involved, that most of what is happening online is happening on our phones. I want to turn to the Pew Research. They did a study a while ago of our connection of our phone. So let's go ahead and check out some of the fact sheets. Talks about who is smartphone dependent, and our percent are very much increasing about the people who don't use anything at home, but they only have smartphones. I'm curious to see how this will then impact the next level of product. I'm thinking back to my own upbringing, and I remember call waiting was the biggest thing that ever existed, that you could call someone's house and they would tell you who was calling the phone. That blew our minds for a while. In fact, my neighbor and I, we would go to each other's houses, call each other just to think, how cool is it that we know who's calling us right now? Fast forward from you knowing who's calling you to not even having a home phone, not even having a landline phone number. Fast forward that to, we won't be using broadband necessarily. It might just be on our phones using data. So there's two links I'm going to include on our page. The first talks about this fact sheet of mobiles, how dependent are we, and what do those demographics look like. The second is going to be on our social media. I was talking to a colleague the other day, and she found a study about how more people in less developed countries and nations are relying on mobile technology, and we got into a discussion. What happens when people in less developed countries, maybe ones with less developed economic systems, now have access to mobile banking and they can pay a vendor instead of carrying cash or having to convert the money or having to go to a very unreliable banking spot next door? What happens when people in less developed countries don't have as much access to water and they now can find locations of listed available water or listed available trucks or aid or what that might look like? What happens in people in less developed places don't have medical efficient material or vaccinations available, and so instead of wondering why someone is sick or not doing well, we can now search the symptoms. This is great. These are basic things that our ability to use mobile phones in less developed countries are accelerating. What happens when these things accelerate more than development, more than education? What happens when our reliance on a computer or a mobile system is now more important than other parts? Or said in a different way, what happens when less developed countries have such a reliance on mobile technology that other parts are still lacking in development? This is kind of like this very typical level of any type of working out gym experience. I am not a gym brat. I am far from it. In fact, I do yoga and I'm a runner. So these are my sports backgrounds. But I know many people who do work out. And one of the common phrases they talk about is, do you even lift, bro? Or what about leg day? And I understand that the joke here is that people with very strong upper part of their body that don't have any lower part are really developing their arms and their biceps and their triceps, but their legs are still very much lacking. What happens when you're doing one thing really well, but something else is so severely lacking? What happens when we have such great access to basic knowledge, and yet we still don't have access to running water that is efficient, that is healthy, that's accessible, that's clean? I just have a couple of concerns about that. What happens when we know more about what's happening in the football game or the soccer game more than understanding menstruation or how to clean a wound or better products that we should be using to build houses. To transfer back to the textbook, let's talk about Instagram stories. Instagram stories offered brands creative ways to show inner workings of their business, repurpose blog content, promote upcoming live events, offer product demos, celebrate highlights, and display company creativity. I'm not sure about y'all, but I love the Olympics. And this last Olympic cycle, certainly the ones in Russia and the ones in the last Winter Olympics, really highlighted a lot of these. So I can now see Shaun White and how he is prepping for the next, whatever it might be, what he's eating for breakfast, the day that he goes out and earns a gold medal for his millionth time. Okay, or his third time. I'm biased. I've met him before. He's a San Diego or at least a SoCal fellow. But what happens when I now have access to the Instagram stories that help hype up his material? I can now buy his products because he just won gold. He then can hit 100 or 1 million followers after he won gold. Instagram stories have this ability to give us access in places we would have never been given access before. I compare this to a number of decades ago. There used to be this old show called The Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's a very old show. And what happened is that the camera crew would go into these people's houses, and there was this really funny host that would be, "Welcome to the Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous." Okay, I'm not good at impersonating him, but it gave people access to a place they would have never normally been given. Then you certainly can see this how it translates into having access to the White House. And I'm thinking of the Kennedy interview for tour of the area. And then we had access to, MTV Cribs. And then we have access to, you name it. Now we have access to all these people's experiences that we would have never normally have seen before. Thanks, reality TV show. Okay, so let's talk about big ideas and businesses. There are theories on how business models of social networks are derived. So you need to have four aspects: value creation, target marketing, competencies, and revenues. And you need to have these four components because social interaction, shared values, and trust are predictors of the future. I think of airline industries when I think of thinking about future companies and future predictors of what could be happening. As I am a member of United Airlines, I've flown hundreds of times. I opened my first credit card with United Airlines, and they still have some of the cheapest flights for flying back and forth from Philly to San Diego. So when the April 2017 incident of the man being pulled off the plane was viral and on every news channel, I was shocked that an airline had the right and power to forcibly remove a human being like that. I'll put a link up on our page if you haven't seen the video of the man that was taken off the plane. And second, I was more horrified that this was not a one-time incident. I mean, United then had incidents of various other problems of a dog being killed in March 2018 or being put on the wrong plane. And how are passengers expected to create a better dialogue with transparency and trust when the narrative of flying is abysmal? Nobody says, "Wow, this flying experience is really what I'm looking forward to," of the process of going through TSA and being checked and getting on the plane and being treated like I'm a number or a cattle and then being hustled off and being gouged an insane amount of money to fly. How can we create a better story and a better narrative to change the social interaction? Who can create more shared values between these airlines? And one company I think is doing a little bit better is Southwest. They obviously have earned more fame because they're more clear about what they're trying to do. They're more clear about their values. They're more clear about willing to try on avant-garde ways to save expenses because that's one of the values that they promote. So they do things like limiting the magazine pages. They have people choosing their seats. They handle most of their bookings online when online wasn't the first place you went to book a flight. You would go to some type of travel agency, or you'd actually call a person and book your flight through the phone. And listen, I'm not endorsing Southwest or United or any type of airline. I'm just talking about how even Southwest has had faux pas. Even every airline has had these very major problematic areas. And how have they handled these faux pas? I would say that Southwest, compared to United, has handled them better in a communication standpoint. If airlines want to change this current course of people don't enjoy flying, people aren't excited to book that $400 ticket to, I don't know, Pennsylvania for Thanksgiving, say, like I just did. How can we change this? How can we make a better social interaction and shared values and trust as these way to make better, competent revenues? Another area that people have now capitalized are bloggers. Bloggers have capitalized on the desire for more and diverse content. Besides having one stream of ideas, I'm referring to gatekeeping. We now have access to new points of views that may influence social change and acceptance of new political positions and adoption of ever newer technologies. I certainly follow some bloggers that I probably wouldn't normally have a conversation with in real life, nor would their content be sponsored by a company or a news organization, but I certainly value more diverse and more voices. And I think bloggers are having this ability now that they have online content and they're also making a brand and a fame for themselves. And lastly, this is where we're going to finish up today, geotagging. Imagine future privacy and professional implications when a user agrees to share her or his every move of mobile data in exchange for brand offers. You're probably thinking, oh, this is a little bit Big Brother. I don't know. I don't bring my phone with me everywhere. I don't turn it on. I don't check into places. Let me tell you, they are still following you. And this is a problem, certainly in my opinion, because companies expect you to have the ability to say, I would not want this information shared, so I have to make a better decision of what that looks like. So they say it will take media literacy skills for users to make smart decisions about location sharing or participating in a brand loyalty program. What does that mean? Brands gain granular targeted consumer data, which increases sale conversion. The more they know about you, the better they can sell to you, the better they can promote to you, the better they can make money off of you. By you simply getting on an app and downloading it and accepting to various user agreements, they're simply observing you. By simply observing you, they're saying, we're not changing your behavior, we're not telling you to go a certain way, but if they're following your shopping if they're following your shopping history and you are shopping for new boots because it's cold in Pennsylvania, or so I hear, they're going to look at what you're currently looking through. What kind of colors are you looking at? Is it going to be brown? Is it going to be gray? Is it going to be black? Is it a high boot? Is it a little boot? Is it a ski boot? Is it a working boot? Is it a fashion boot? They're saying, we're not changing your behavior, but we're just taking information from you. Now, to counter this idea, I would probably say that they're taking this information from you and they're giving you certain options. If I know that the most searched color right now is a maroon boot, and I give you two options, either a tan boot or a black boot, they would say, well, you didn't buy any of these because maybe they didn't fit your style. If I, as a company, gave you three options and I force you to make one of these because we need to wear boots when it's cold outside, how does that limiting of options funnel your decision? This is like the argument that it's expected for the user to know what we're doing for you to make a better decision. Don't blame us because you made that choice. It's like, if you can't digest milk, don't buy and drink milk. There are tons of other milk options. They're comparing it that it's on you, the user, that you should not be drinking milk if you are lactose intolerant. If you, the user, do not want to be geotagged in that recent photos or your news scrolling, then don't scroll for the news. Then don't check into Facebook. Then don't check your email. Then don't look for boots. Yet, this is much more than milk. It's not a product like milk. We're already saying that social media is an identity, a community, a way to have connections. So this isn't just this one-way dimensional understanding of money and social media. Rather, we're saying social media is a culture, it's a community, it's identities, it's a brand, it's relationships, it's transparency. And for people to be taking that research and data, what are they using with these geotagging options? So here's the last prompt of the day. A user's social media literacy will guide them to make smart decisions about location sharing. How do you see this argument? Specifically, what are some concerns of using geotagging options? We can know that it certainly can benefit us. You tag into the local store and you get a better % off. You can keep track of what you've done. You can look at people in the other area. But what are some concerns about this as well? If you're stuck, if you don't quite know where to approach this because you are completely not on any social media, you don't have a cell phone of any type or tablet, then check out the Pew Research infographics on users. Having that information might kind of guard your decision on this. To wrap up today, we talked about the history of basic technology, the intricacy of how new technology is now tied to mobile understanding and our uses of that, and then how it's taken all different directions between crowdsourcing and big companies and guaranteed money making of angel investors and startups and bloggers and entrepreneurs. To wrap up, come Thursday, I will see you, well, quote, see you in the classroom. We have a guest speaker, and you'll also be finishing your presentations. So I will see you in the classroom on Thursday, the 25th. If you have questions about nonprofits, or our speaker, Cal Fields, is in social media marketing, but she also has worked for nonprofits, and she certainly knows about crowd fundraising. So if you have questions on those, come and be prepared to be wowed by Kale, and then you'll also be finishing your presentation. Have a good day.